and welcome to episode 272 of our SAP on Azure video podcast. Today is December 16th, and together with Goran, we are here to talk about anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hello, everyone. So, this will be our last episode of 2025, and like in all the years since 2020, we want to wrap up the year with our colleague Jürgen Thomas. Jürgen, it's so amazing that you're here with us again. Thank you so much. Let's together take a look at a very interesting year 2025. I think lots of AI, lots of security, lots of new regions, lots of BTP. I think there are a lot of things that we can talk about.
Yep, absolutely. Now, also, I need to admit that that from my team's point of view, this calendar year 2025 was a pretty emotional one since we lost two of our team members to cancer. Tony Wu, our team member in Sydney in January, and only 3 weeks ago, Ralph Klar, who was our team member in Germany, in Cologne to be more precise. We lost him to cancer, both in ages where you don't expect something like that, where you expect them living for another 30 years. So that was quite sobering and quite dramatic for the team and the families, especially with the age of the kids or the state the kids were in terms of studying and then being in college and so on. So that certainly kind of overshadowed the year here a little bit with the team. Nevertheless, I mean, we are focused. We've stayed focused and stay focused on customer experience and the work we are doing around SAP workload on Azure in general, and in our case, in my team's case specifically, around Azure Core, which are our networking, storage, and compute VMs experiences, where we made reasonable good progress. It's kind of this kind of thing in the middle, where you are in the outliers or on the tail end of a new Intel processor generation. It was called Sapphire Rapids, where we introduced basically we introduced it last year already. We talked, I think, last year about it already. And now you do the tail end of the certifications of more exotic kind of scale-out scenarios, these kinds of things. And then on the other side, you have to ramp up into the new Granite Rapids Intel processor family. So that's like you're a little bit in the middle. Nevertheless, I mean, still a lot of engineering to be done. SAP also kept us busy by changing their sizing framework. People might know the sizing framework in SAP as we knew it for 32 years or something like that was based on SAP SD Benchmarks, the sales and distribution standard benchmark. Doing 6 transactions, you run it on a VM or on a server in former times, and you can push a certain number of users before CPU resources are depleted, and there's a subs number spilled out SAPS, and so that benchmark, so to speak, only ran on traditional database and non-HANA databases, let's call it that way. Was using NetWeaver EHP2, that certainly is a little bit older, to be more precise, year 2012. The meanwhile went even out of extended maintenance with SAP. So SAP was on the hook to create a new sizing workload. I mean, you need to somehow size these things, and ideally one with HANA, which they indeed succeeded, which figured out to be a real good engineering workload again. So now there's a new Q2C benchmark. It's also on the benchmark webpage of SAP. that spills out now so-called ASAPs unit, so subs, but with a leading A. And it's also a benchmark that runs the ABAP stack of S/4HANA and HANA in one VM. It was very interesting to engineer that benchmark and to start the automation of it, because our goal at the moment, and you see that in SAP Note 1928533, that we are basically re-evaluating with that new benchmark. We are re-evaluating already certified SAP or SAP certified VM types, simply to see the differences. And there are differences. There's a certain fact that the new ASAP's number is lower. SAP will move their sizing framework to that ASAPs over the time, to the ASAPs unit over time. And so what we did since we wanted to really re-evaluate all our existing SKUs, well, many of our existing SKUs with that new benchmark, we did a lot of automation around it. In all honesty, we used AI as well to do the benchmark tuning, which is something that I consider as being very successful with our team. So we build an AI agent network, using different models depending on the tasks that is at hand for that agent, in order to do the tuning automatically. And we are achieving very reasonable results with it. Sure, if I might have a person sitting there for another 2 weeks, we might squeeze out another 1 or 2% or 3. Doesn't matter at the sizing we are today. It doesn't matter at all whether you have 2-3% left or right. So very successful exercise, not only related to the fact that we have tremendous good throughput in doing the sizing, but we also can reuse a lot of that framework now to expand the testing of certain other characteristics of our VM, of storage, of network throughput, where we have automated tests already that we are now extending and can run in a way, or can evaluate the results in a way better fashion, and also can tune automatically for these things. So
basically, yeah, whatever you do, you are testing and pressing, doing performance tests and stability tests in test environment. We call it canary, in order really to be on a safe side, that we can say, yeah, we deliver with the really highest quality.
Yeah. I mean, look, the testing is more important than ever. The interesting thing is a little bit well, I mean, first of all, there's no excuse on our side to a degree to run into with some of the things that we unfortunately slipped, and some of our customers did encounter those. They're clear. They're always clear. You very often identify clear gaps that one should have caught, could have caught in more diligent testing, in let's say also covering more edge cases. We certainly try with our SAP workload testing that we have automated, where we have 7x24 systems running that are part of our safe deployment process, so to speak. We are trying to catch quite a few of those. Obviously, not all got caught. Then we are expanding those tests as well. It's a steady thing that we are doing, and we are certainly working then with the specific teams that produce the functionality. When I look at SAP BTP, for example, using SQL, PostgreSQL service of Azure. We are working with those teams to integrate SAP scenarios into their test suites. So we are not doing it all ourselves, but we are basically the middleman between the SAP B2B services, the backing services, and us, our development teams, in order to help them to isolate the scenario, integrate the scenario into the testing. On the other side, as mentioned, we'll look at S4HANA. We have whole S4HANA systems, pacemaker clustered, everything running 7/24 in order to see what's happening. We're using AI to go through the logs in order to make sure that things that raise up are real cases. Because if you're too noisy filing issues against your colleagues in development, and these are all false positives, then if you come the 11th time, they are not taking you too serious anymore. So you need to be very diligent in precise in identifying real issues, and then really messaging and kicking off the processing of these issues by your colleagues in the different development teams. But so that's where we are extremely busy, and we are continuing to do that work, not only as a reactive thing, but also as a proactive measure in order to widen to widen the edge cases, to cover more edge cases, to cover the main scenarios anyway. But we really want to widen the edge cases. There's also a new workload. Epic Healthcare has nothing to do with SAP, that seems to stress the storage path in a very different manner, in a more voluminous manner than SAP workloads so far. So my team is handling Epic Healthcare workload as well. And so we have interesting scenarios there, and scenarios as we improve them will help SAP workload as well. So these workloads are very complementary in a sense. I don't need as much compute workload. I don't need as much memory on the Epic workload that I need on the HANA side. But I need way more storage throughput, AIOps throughput, lower latency with the Epic workload than we usually need with HANA. So working on both will make the whole platform better. And especially also in the Epic workload, we are now ramping up the scenario testing, identifying the different scenario and ramping up those as well in the team. So that's super helpful. Now, on the other side, we also need to be clear and looking in the abstract manner, or looking a little bit on a higher level, especially also obviously here in management. If you talk about SAP workload, S/4HANA workload, everybody thinks, well, you know what, engineer one time, and now you have the platform for 40,000 different SAP customers that all go to S/4HANA with their business processes. That might be to a degree true in a sense when you look at smaller units, when you look at a few terabyte memory and 100, 200 CPUs. But as you approach that area of 32 terabyte, huge VMs with nearly 900, 1800 vCPUs, you're going into an area where, in general, there's not a lot of experience. There are tens of thousands of HANA, S/4HANAs running here on VMs or servers that have 100, 200 CPUs, few terabyte memory. So huge experience there. Guest operating system or the operating systems are all used to it. HANA development, all good. No issues there. But as you go into those spaces, that high-end scaling, huge amounts of memory, huge amounts of CPU, the air is getting thinner. The experiences are getting thinner. And then complexity, or then what you really see then is the variety of different SAP business process implementations, where one customer is, let's say, very using functionality traditionally out of the apparel footwear services. And the other customer is using mostly financials. Very different load on the database, very different patterns, memory access patterns, CPU resource consumption patterns, storage patterns that you're seeing. And that is then an area where we still, or in each of the cases, are working very closely with our customers. Might it be RISE customers or might it be non-RISE customers that are using this type of VMs and infrastructure. That is a mandatory thing still. This is not something where you have it easy to say, hey, look, this is the architecture, this is what you deploy, and it will handle it in all cases. Additionally, the complexity in that space is that your customers in those sizes often don't have a complementary test system that can apply the whole workload. Because that's a huge effort, let's be honest. That's costing you huge amounts of money to simulate a workload of these huge workloads of order processing coming in, whatever they do. It is huge systems that comes, and so having a workload simulation for these things is a super expensive thing that not a lot of customers are doing in these sizes anymore. And so that is making things sometimes very complex. And
you can't really simulate. I mean,
exactly.
different. You can't do it. You have SD benchmark and okay. That's it.
That's also the importance for us to work with those customers to get these to see these patterns, to identify those patterns, so that we eventually can bring them down and size them down and create, let's say, such a scenario without having a huge S/4HANA system on top of it and 30 something that uses 30 something terabyte, but really isolate the system, the requirements down, the issues down, to say, okay, now this is something that we can use for engineering, for steady testing, for measuring the improvements that we are making down in the stack. And so that's one area where we were quite busy this year as well. Again, not only as SAP workload, Epic Healthcare workload contributed quite a bit here as well. That's but it's super interesting area. What we are seeing is a very interesting tendency as well. And I think I might have mentioned it in another podcast already. The 7-8 years ago, when we brought our 12 terabyte and everything, the usual conversation you had with customers and where the customers were not so happy about is like, oh, I need to jump up to the next larger VM or server because I need the memory. Oh, my CPUs are bored as hell. That whole thing changed. We literally do have customers now that move to our 32 terabyte VM that is sitting on 16 sockets. I mean, a real large thing that has, well, tons of subs or ASUBs, not because of the memory demand,
but because of CPU.
It's the CPU. They were literally sitting on our 24 terabyte virtual machine, and they were the older Cascade generation, the one that we introduced with in 2021, and they were like, well, our HANA databases were simply running out of steam, and so that is where you see the changes over the years as well. That S/4HANA is from an architecture point of view, where you now see more, let's say, more comprehensive activity on the database than give me that row that out of the customer master data, or give
Yeah.
me that row out of give me that order header. Real aggregations being done out on database and see and so on, and so it's getting more complex. And let's be honest, I mean, we can debate a lot about, or it always sounds like, oh yeah, the data's in memory shouldn't be difficult. But yeah, scanning through dozens of gigabytes of
It's CPU,
data in memory is also costing CPUs. And
yeah.
if this is not only done by one query, but by 1,000 queries or 500 queries in parallel, yeah, that's costing CPU.
But that's really interesting. I like these insights, because this for me really tells that probably in the beginning it was all about, look, memory, I just need to put my data in there, but maybe it was not really so much used. I mean, yes, it was there, it was in memory, and as you said, probably a lot of queries were executed and you got good results. But now probably customers and S/4HANA have evolved in a way that they
Yeah,
now really want to leverage and use this information, which
yeah,
then obviously, results in more CPU usage.
absolutely. I mean, and we see a few effects here. I don't want to simply say, hey, it's coming down to SAP S/4HANA doing more complex operations. But we also see, I mean, go 7 years, 8 years back, or 7 years back, 6 years back, uh, the customers that used S/4HANA at that point in time, certainly from a business process or bandwidth of business processes, was more limited. There was a
Hmm.
smaller
Hmm.
band. Meanwhile, S/4HANA tremendously added new business processes. There were tremendous more higher number of customers using S/4HANA, with way more variations in combinations of business processes. So now you're now getting a similar kind of spectrum of business processes that are running on S/4HANA. I shared it before on a NetWeaver platform. Very huge spectrum of different business processes. Then you have implementations of customers that might not be more brownfield.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're more more own written coding coming onto the platform, and we all know how that often worked when you out of the past, when a customer, like, go back 15 years, when a customer moved a business suite from an Oracle database to a SQL Server database, usually also needed quite a bit of tuning after, with
Hmm.
their own written reports that were written towards the characteristics of an Oracle database. Now the query tuning is different for SQL Server, and you see a similar thing here as well with HANA. Now, and that's so as things move more onto S/4HANA, more variations,
Yeah. Of
more
course.
custom code that is not optimal eventually, and that pushes on the CPU. It's a simple thing. If I
Yeah.
don't wait for I/O to happen, then if I can blast through the memory and read terabytes of it,
Mm.
or dozens of gigabytes in parallel, then yeah, that costs
Mm.
CPU intensive then.
But that influence also the VM's queues design, right? To also have an
Yeah,
offer with same memory but more CPUs, right?
yeah, but again, it's yeah, we get with all the new processors, we certainly get more CPU performance out of them, no doubt about it. And that's also, as mentioned, the thing is, compared to 6 7 years ago, my very often the reason to go to the newer SKUs, let's say, or the next highest SKU of a VM is very often these days, I need more CPU.
Mm.
The other
Mm.
thing that we are seeing is certainly that uh, that, that like when you go back 20 years ago, database query tuning was a very was a profession in a sense, was a role even in a lot of the basis teams and a lot of the DBA teams. There was a reason why they were specialists.
Yep.
And I think from the way how one approached HANA as an in-memory database, doing query tuning, doing indexing was not on the top of the list. It was more like on the bottom of the list because hey, the data as a memory should come back fast. Very different to traditional databases where you eventually need to read 20 gigabytes from your disk, which takes a time. And so what we are discovering today is as well that yeah, we see that the query tuning is also necessary in these large systems in order to get CPU consumption, CPU resource consumption a little bit more under control. The other area that we saw as well, or see as well, that the native storage extensions, the NSE, is something that as good as every customer in that large space is using these days. I mean, that's also something where SAP HANA development put a lot of efforts into it. We in Microsoft, we used it pretty heavily. And so we see the same thing with all the large customers that are using native storage extensions quite a bit.
Nice.
That's also one of our test scenarios that we do have.
But we were also, just recently we had a recording about customers on HANA growing the database, and they reached 32 terabytes, and then going beyond, so they are moving towards scale-out as well. Some of them. Do you see this trend slowly a bit as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think the scale-out scenario is a very legitimate scenario, and a scenario that SAP is investing quite a bit in, especially around S/4HANA, because there is a limit. We also always need to keep in mind that there is a limit of of what a database software can scale. Where in a more abstract manner, we always think throwing more CPU at something, at an application that will increase the throughput, which is in databases not always the case, depending on your workload. If it's just reading workload, well, yeah, you can scale quite a bit with the number of your CPUs and memory that you throw at your workload from in the infrastructure, the front end and the workload and the reading workload. Chances are that you will do pretty okay in scaling. The problem is more about your workloads, database workloads that do changes, because the databases, and this includes HANA as well, have so-called ACID concepts that need to make sure that you have isolated transactions, that you are able to do crash recovery without losing committed data changes, and so on and so forth. And so this requires you to have coding and to have structures in your database that in some cases really are only allowing one thread or to do a certain activity at a certain point in time, like copying a certain piece of data into a certain memory location. And you can't have then some other guy doing a similar thing in your structure, and so on. And this is around the redo log buffer, and usually your log structures, where you hold database logs to make sure that as you change a piece of data, nobody else is just coming in and overriding it. And so this is making scaling by simply throwing more CPUs on it very difficult. And at the end, has the effects that the more of CPUs might actually have a negative effect on your throughput. And you see that as well in SAP notes where the usage of hyperthreading is discussed or instructed and how it should be used. And you see it then in our case as well in the VMs that we offered in the 32 terabyte space, where we have two VMs. The one is with close to 896 vCPUs not using hyperthreading, and the other one is 1792 that is using hyperthreading. And when we look at S4HANA deployments on these 32 terabyte VMs, we mostly look at the M896. So now going forward and saying, hey, look, I want to do 48 terabyte or 64 terabyte in a scale-up manner, it will be to throw more CPUs at it. And in order to address the more on memory that you have, that you scan, that you have data in, that you eventually want to access. And that is then the problem. If the CPU, the single vCPU, the single core is not substantially increasing the speed to execute the instructions, you're not going further. The point is that there's a balance between your workload and the number of CPUs that are there that it can scale it. That might be it's very workload specific as well. You might have an S4HANA customer where the operational reporting is taking a huge part of the workload, is a huge part of the workload, where you might go expand further, and you can go further with the number of CPUs and still scale the throughput up. And you might have a thing where it's all about order entries and deliveries, a lot of changes, and less reporting where you're not going as far. And so that's the dilemma that you have with databases. And this is not HANA. This is not HANA only. You can take every database that needs to follow that ACID concepts that has these scalability limits. And that is where we are now at a point with the hardware that's out, with the next generation of Intel processors, where one might eventually get a piece higher with the supported memory in scale up. But there are limits. You ain't gonna go to 128 terabyte in a scale up anytime soon, and so that's why scale out is as larger and larger customers are moving to S4HANA, as the data in S4HANA systems the customers are using is growing. We need to embrace the scale out as well with S4HANA. SAP is doing a lot of work, as mentioned. We do have quite a few customers doing it meanwhile, and there are experiences, and so it will become a more standard thing to do that.
That's amazing how these huge, large virtual machines are getting more and more common. I mean, I still remember when we talked about the G series and having half a terabyte of memory. And now we're talking about
0
terabytes of memory.
No doubt. I mean, the development went quite fast on that one, and one certainly did not expect hypervisors, virtualization working in that, scaling up to those means or to those sizes, and it's quite dramatic here. Yes, Then other areas certainly interesting from our side. Our Azure Boost technology, where we move more and more offloading into that, also then has larger capabilities on storage and storage throughput, network throughput. But you need to do that. On the other hand, I mean, as we just said, we have larger and larger VMs that produce more and more workload. More and more workload usually means more and more network traffic and more storage traffic as well. So Also something that we then try to intercept these technologies with the different hardware generations that we are doing, and so that's also a very interesting area where a lot of investments go in from our side. A few of the things that you see already in the current generation is the usage of NVMe as a storage thing. Yeah, that's quite a bit of work, quite a bit of innovations that we do here, no doubt about. Yeah, then when we look in a little bit more broader, I mean, we talked about, Holger, you mentioned regions. We certainly get more and more regions. We are growing. We are growing existing regions. Especially in Europe, we are opening more and more regions, also to tailor a little bit more to individual customers, eventually individual governments as well. But what we are trying to do in Europe in general is basically spread, I wouldn't say the risk, but give customers more opportunity to spread into different, have more choices there as well. Also on large regions. I mean, we increased Sweden Central quite dramatically. Sweden Central is service compatible to Western EU, to the West EU region. We increased Germany West Central quite dramatically, and also are investing big in Italy North right now. And we do have customers that actually are requesting such a thing. I'm working with a huge RISE customer in the automotive space, and they have many manufacturing locations, and their rule is that they only are allowed to have this software stack of 2 manufacturing locations in one region, in one hyperscaler region. And so as they have quite a number of manufacturing locations in Europe, having something in Germany, West Central, having West EU, having Sweden Central, having North EU, having Austria. In this specific case, we are going to use our new Austria region as well. Having Italy North is important to them. Or now we are going to start the deployment of them in South Africa North as well, since they have a manufacturing in South Africa as well. And so it is important also for many of our customers that they wanna kind of spread the risk a little bit and don't throw everything into one region, but especially in Europe, where, let's say, the distances between Germany, West Central, and a West EU is literally
latency is not so. Exactly.
Exactly.
But kind of also that DR, even across the continent, is becoming a commodity, or is a commodity. I mean, which was impossible some 10, 15 years ago. Is because just too expensive, too complex, right? So
that's also now becoming something that they see more and more as a pattern. And then here in the US, we are extending some of our regions quite a bit, and existing regions where we still have enough land, where we have enough power coming in. And so, especially here close by, well, relatively close by, 100 miles from here where I'm sitting is our West US 2 region. In summer, it's a nice drive there with the convertible. And so here and there, I drive by there and see how these things, how our premises there are expanding quite a bit, where we are building anew and where we are increasing the capacities there quite a bit. And the nice thing, especially West US 2, is that it's close to our Columbia River, so a lot of hydro dams there, where we can get the power from. And so That's another one. What we are also doing is we are retrofitting regions with zones. The last one that we did was Japan East, Japan West, Japan East. Tokyo always was a region with zones, but now Japan West is also a region with zones. We have a few of those that we have in the pipeline to expand, simply also to balance a little bit better, to also then again reduce the risk for customers, but as well for us, that in a dense urban space, that you're simply not getting any data centers or power anymore, so that in the same country or continent, talking about Australia, for example, you have a second location that is a full-fledged zonal region that can be offered to the customers, so that you balance these risks in the different countries, in continents as well. So that's an important consideration these days as well. And as we look into expanding the capacity and reducing the risk as well for everybody involved, us, customers, and so on.
Yeah.
That's basically work that we are doing. And as we look on the whole with SAP, I mean, highly successful year for us as well. We see more and more BTP regions coming up with Azure. Quite a bit of deployments happening there. Like in not even or in at 12, like in hour 15, I'm working, talking to SuccessFactors again about our new VMs coming up, some new exciting things for them as well. And so, yeah, I mean, firing out of on all cylinders, so to speak.
Absolutely. I think there's amazing things that have happened in 2025. But maybe then also to wrap this up, are there any things that you are allowed to talk about, that you can talk about, where you're excited about in 2026? I mean, I know we have a huge backlog there, but I'm also sure you cannot talk about everything. But are there a few things where you're saying, look, keep an eye out for a few things?
No, I think I'm specifically excited about the announcement we did about data integration as together with SAP on Ignite, but also our data integrations that we have that we are doing as what we call first party. I'm also super excited about the progress we made around AI with SAP, Copilot integration, bidirectional, that hopefully kind of works out, or that we hope that works out great with SAP, in increasing the number of scenarios and cases they support in the back end. So it's these are exciting things. I was mostly talking about what I'm doing currently, and this is like the foundation underneath to S/4HANA is running. But there's a lot of other things going on between the companies, and are very exciting to see those happening. Really, I mean, AI, everything, everybody talks about AI. We certainly, from our side as well, together with ECS, and there's a blog out by Lalit Patil, the CTO of ECS. We are looking into AIOps, and I think that is an area I'm particularly excited about. Again, I'm more that guy that sits there, that does the infrastructure, thinks about how do I operate things, because we need to operate the infrastructure as well. We know that ECS and our customers that are not RISE yet, they need to operate their systems, and they want our help in the way how they can investigate issues. Ideally, their scenario is like, hey, as one of our customers expressed it so nicely to me at Sapphire, look, I get my users telling me, hey, the order processing or the invoice processing is going slow. Now, I have tons of people that are good, so I sent 5 of them off, and we're looking in all different directions, come back and like, might be this, might be that, we need to look here, we need to look there. And what I want is that somebody types in, hey, there's a problem with the order or invoice processing. Give me some, can you investigate? And then AI agents go off, and the one is checking on the infrastructure, others checking here in the SAP space, checking there, and then coming back and saying, hey, look, we found something, or you should do. This is looking funny. This is looking not okay, or this is looking a little bit strange, so that you get more faster indications and reduce your time to resolution. And that AIOps thing with all the technology with the technologies we have right now is a super exciting thing. And that's particularly where I'm excited about to invest into that, as we did in the small already for my team, but seeing or pushing here what we can do, especially with us on the Azure side, having a lot of telemetry of the infrastructure, that can help customers tremendously, or our managed service partners tremendously, to reduce the operational aspects of the platform and of the SAP workload hosting on our platform.
So we are on the same page of excitement.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
keep an eye out.
it is. I mean, look, it's more, as mentioned, I'm more responsible for these foundations here. Holger, you're more in the business process data integration space, which again, I mean, super exciting there. Super happy about what we announced on Ignite, and working on the execution of that can open tremendous possibilities for the customer. I mean, no doubt about it. And so, but yeah,
That's the
as I'm
combination.
tasked,
It's the
so
foundation
I
and the
think
stuff that.
the whole AI components, tremendous. However, let's also be clear, what we learned as well with AI, it is a lot of engineering that needs to be put behind. You as funny, or as you look into ChatGPT Copilot, you ask some questions. As simple as that seems to be, if you look into what we want to achieve with it, AIOps, these kinds of things are not that simple anymore. There's a lot of training necessary. There's a lot of prompt engineering necessary. There is really a lot of engineering for specific cases needs to happen
to make it work
in order to get reliable responses. That's the key of the thing. Because at the end, I mean, everybody dreams about, in the AIOps area, your agent extending your disks if the disk is closely to run full, the agent doing this, doing that. Well, if you allow an agent doing that,
it has to work.
Everything needs to be right.
Yes.
Everything needs to be right, and that is, I think, the big challenge we are going to have is to really getting the responses super accurate as possible for the different cases, so that you trust those agents, and as they bring up their recommendations, or even up to the point where you have them making changes to your systems and configurations and so on. So that's now the good thing on our side, on Azure side, is again that we internally for operating of Azure go the same path. So we do gain these experiences like no other. You look into millions of hosts that we have, you look into millions of network devices that we have, that we are using AI as well to use to analyze the telemetry, to learn, to create the models, to train the models, to create the framework. So that's the nice thing about it. So that as we learn all together in Azure, can as well expose things like that, can expose things to the customers and have the experience generating or creating AI agents that can be used and are accurate and precise enough.
Jürgen, I think this is a perfect closing and a great excitement and lookout for 2026. Let's see what we can all do with AIOps. I mean, I've seen already a few things that the team have been working, and it is really, really impressive. And as you said, I mean, we have a lot of data that we can leverage to build good AIOps agents. So really exciting to see what will happen in 2026.
Absolutely, we are, and now we look into the holiday season, take a little bit of breather, take a little bit of a rest here, and go full steam out again in 2026, folks.
Perfect. Well, Jürgen, thank you so much. It was great to have you again, and we'll speak next
year.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, happy holiday season.
Happy holidays.
Have a great new year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.